Worlds will rise, worlds will fall. Yada yada yada, you know the drill. When Johnnie Torch Reviews Crisis on Infinite Earths Parts 4 and 5. We are back with you live once again on another Johnnie Torch Reviews. This time we are going to take on Parts 4 and 5 of CW's ambitious crossover, Crisis on Infinite Earths. And yes, I was very pleased with this one. I thought it worked out very well. I thought it actually lived up to the hype and was one of the best, if not the best, of CW's crossovers. Going back to their earliest crossovers, this one really did pay off. They pulled out all the stops. They brought in as many, cameos and guest stars of previous DC Comics TV shows, mostly live action. We got Kevin Conroy. We got, of course, John Wesley Shipp's masterful turn as Earth 90's Flash, one of my particular favorites. They paid homage to Christopher Reeve's incarnation of Superman through Brandon Routh, of course, who did a fantastic job. And even some of the more minor cameos were, very exciting, peppered through the series. Burt Ward, of course, is the original Dick Grayson. We had Alexander Knox from Batman '89. We had the Huntress from the short-lived Birds of Prey TV series. So it did give it a feel of a very grand, epic tapestry that they culled from all different sources to really give it that hint of authenticity and, made it feel like a very genuine part of the DC universe. We're going to talk about that all in a second. Let's see. Starting off, I'm going to mention some of the cameos that I think we didn't get that we probably were hoping for. Ones that disappointed me, at least, in that they didn't happen. I've been saying from the beginning, I think Mark McClure should have had a part. The original Jimmy Olsen from the Christopher Reeve series, the Donner/Reeve series. Kind of disappointed that they didn't have a place for him. They kind of went with the idea that Brandon Routh's Superman sort of superseded, what was going on in the Reeve series. Also, Linda Carter not getting a role as Wonder Woman, which was pretty disappointing considering that she had a role on Supergirl as the President for quite a while, and one would expect that she'd be able to come back and they'd be able to afford her. Apparently, she didn't want to reprise the role, which seems to be, that seems to be the standard for her. I don't think she's ever gone back to the role in any capacity and lending the voice to animation or anything. That just might be one of her, decisions that they were going to have to abide by. Of course, I think a cameo would have sufficed, and of course she wouldn't have had to wear the exact same Wonder Woman costume, but to give her, perhaps that little bit of closure that John Wesley Shipp was afforded as the Flash, it might have gone a long way for fans. So that's kind of disappointing. But they pretty much touched on every live-action incarnation. They also touched on some of the more current DCEU productions in the montage at the end. I'm kind of getting towards the end here before getting to the beginning of this series, but they did show, Swamp Thing, Titans, Doom Patrol, all these things apparently existing in the multiverse. We got that nice little tribute to Christopher Reeve with the John Williams score and the overhead shot of him flying over the Earth, which of course was very nice. It was a much better take than the one they used in Superman Returns, which was like mostly CGI and pretty static looking at that. So again, just talking about the feeling of the whole world, the DC universe, it was very enjoyable. I think they did pay respect and did homage some of the best parts of, the DC animated universe, the DC extended universe. Of course, it was also kind of disappointing. Everybody wanted to see Michael Keaton show up and stuff like that, but you know, that's kind of above their pay grade, I think, in CW. But still, they made the most of what they had to work with. All right, talking about the show proper. Episode 4 we started with, and this one was written also by Marv Wolfman, who wrote the original Crisis comics. We start with the Monitor's origin, and I'm not sure exactly how comic accurate it was, because I haven't read Crisis in a long time, since I was a kid, so I don't really remember too much about the story. Since I was 8 years old, I probably haven't read it. I wasn't a huge fan of it because I didn't like the deaths of all the heroes that, you know, died in Crisis, which is kind of what they did back then, late 80s, early 90s. DC Comics, it was, let's kill off a lot of heroes and replace them with, you know, second generation. So the Monitor's origin, yeah, that was interesting. We got Spectre Arrow. Now, this was something I really enjoyed. We got Cosmic Ollie. And I liked the, you know, the reverb on the voice, and he had the shadowy Jedi-esque type apparel. If he was to carry on as this character at some junction in the series, I would be happy with that. I think that's kind of worked for him. I mean, I was feeling at the time, well, how were they going to do this? Spectre, Oliver Queen. I mean, Oliver Queen's a man of action. I don't really see him just sort of imparting wisdom and, you know, but he got the job done as Spectre. And I thought it was really cool what they did with him there. All right, then, of course, we have... Let's talk about the cameo. This was the big cameo, the Ezra Miller cameo. Again, this lends credibility to the concept that there will be a Flash movie with Ezra Miller, that it's okay because they're different universes. And, you know, it also kind of lends that authenticity that, yeah, we're not going to totally ignore, you know, the DCEU. That's kind of what, like, Marvel was doing for a while with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. can talk about something that happened on in the Marvel movies, but the Marvel movies won't acknowledge it. And so here, at least, it felt like it was a mutual, you know, concession to each other's existence. It was pretty cool. I honestly, though, I have to say that it just goes to show how much Ezra's Flash pales in comparison with Grant Gustin's Flash. That's kind of the only problem. Now, I'm not a hater of Ezra Miller. As a matter of fact, I liked Justice League more than most people, and I thought he was all right in that. But, you know, Grant Gustin got it all over him, and I think Ezra Miller just looked the worse for being on the same stage as Grant Gustin, to be totally honest. Perhaps this will spur them on to make him a better Flash in his own movie. He was kind of the, you know, the quirky comedy relief in Justice League, and he still seemed that way in this appearance. The costume is still much worse than Grant Gustin's. No matter which way you slice it, it looks like some kind of, I don't know, the armored up kind of look. I don't know, it just doesn't sell it for me as the Flash. He kind of, you know, is just kind of goofy, and I don't know. I like that they're tying the both universes together, showing the both Flashes from both universes, but again, I don't think this did Ezra Miller any service in his, you know, pursuits going forward in a Flash movie. It kind of just goes to show how, you know, how inadequate he is compared to Grant Gustin anyway. And he does name drop Victor Stone, of course, being his buddy Cyborg in Justice League. So hopefully they're going to pick up that thread. And, you know, it's been going back and forth, you know, whether it's going to be a Flashpoint movie, it's not going to be a Flashpoint movie, is Cyborg going to be in it, is Ben Affleck going to be in it, and Gal Gadot. So, if they do go back and try to pick up that thread that, yeah, those actors are still going to revolve around this Flash, that will be cool. But the scene itself didn't really do anything for me, to be honest. This also continued the Oliver Queen farewell tour, where they kind of, they plucked him out of various points in the series history. I don't know, his confronting Ray Palmer, which was not really that memorable of a scene. The first meeting, I think, of Oliver and Barry, the death of, which was, I thought, a strange place to go to pick up Sarah, but the death of Sarah, which was a sad. I remember at the time how sad that was, because Sarah was actually the best Canary, and they really dropped the ball in not being able to just build the whole Arrow show around her and Oliver, quite honestly. And we'll get back to her in a minute, because she was a focal character of the Legends segment. This is the Arrow segment, so as I said, obviously they were kind of focused on Oliver. And fittingly, he dies during the Arrow episode, so there's that. So they plucked them from the Speed Force. Somehow Oliver gives him the power to continue on in the Speed Force or whatever, because as we left them, they were in the, I don't know, the outside of time point, and they had to jump back into time. One of the most disappointing things to me was, again, I don't remember the guy's name, the Asian guy, we'll just call him the smart guy. They brought him in, and supposedly he's going to be the Atom replacement, because they're basically kicking Brandon Routh out of the show. I don't know why, but he's going to be the Atom replacement, and he didn't do anything in this series that really couldn't have been done by another intelligent superhero, such as, Ray, or, obviously Felicity wasn't going to be in it, Curtis maybe, I don't know, but they really didn't do anything with this character other than to play up his humility and, oh, why are they picking me for this? I'm not really a superhero. I'm not doing anything that anybody else couldn't do. That kind of, I don't know, that kind of was his gimmick, and I thought it felt stale after the first couple of times they did that. Again, he doesn't get anywhere after this. He kind of just ends as he started, not really being part of any show. So I don't know how they're going to reintroduce him. It kind of feels like the Ray when they did Crisis on Earth X, where they kind of introduced him sort of playing up that he was going to be this big deal, and he really wasn't anything, and they didn't really need him whatsoever. So Lex Luthor, of course, they go back in time to deal with the Monitor, Supergirl, the smart guy, and Luthor. And of course, Luthor, does a double cross. Again, John Cryer is just fantastic in this role. I was so afraid they were going to kill him off, because they weren't afraid to do that before. It was just the Monitor that brought him back, but I was afraid they were going to kill off John Cryer's Lex Luthor, and we wouldn't have him anymore. Of course, that wouldn't make any sense, since there's going to be a Superman series coming up, and you would, one would expect that he would have a pretty, large recurring role in that series. But he causes trouble. He's trying to bend the origin of the universe to his will. Not sure how he could do that, but if anybody can, it's Lex Luthor. And he causes some trouble, and Supergirl ends up duking it out with him. Plot-wise, it's not really the most, the most exemplar of plots. Basically, the Monitor is there causing trouble with his little shadow demons, which the team don't seem to have much problem fighting. They're like, they're basically video game fodder, and it's like punch them the right way and they turn into a puff of smoke. They're not really the boss level stuff. And that was, I guess not the biggest deal, but still, if you're looking for some really strong storyline there, it really didn't. I was trying to compare this to, like, Endgame, where you had Thanos and you had, like, you know, the big finish. And that's kind of what they did here as well. Oliver basically does the noble sacrifice, and I guess they don't really spell it out, but he sort of exhausts his Spectre energy, duking it out with the Anti-Monitor. And, you know, they did it well. I think, in all honesty, it probably was a little more effective than Endgame. I'm not sure. I probably have to watch it again. I mean, I've seen Endgame a couple of times. But they both have their signature line, you know, Tony Stark, I am Iron Man. You know, Oliver gets, you know, you have failed this universe. So it was on par. They really sent Oliver out strong. They gave him, you know, the touching farewell, which was good. Unlike Tony, who kind of just was paralyzed and died in paralysis after a couple of minutes. That's kind of why I think this one was a little more satisfying. I'm not sure exactly what the heroes were up to. They kind of like were standing there doing the Care Bear stare. And that, I guess, was, I don't know, the signal that they needed, because Oliver says something like, you know, you'll know what to do when the time comes. Again, another sort of Doctor Strange-esque you know, hint, but they really don't do anything. They just kind of stand there and stare. And Oliver ends up defeating the Anti-Monitor at the dawn of time. They thought they had defeated him by not letting the Monitor engage in his experiment, but I guess apparently that just left the Monitor, you know, in his future, or whatever it was, 10,000 years in the past, I guess, even though it was a futuristic society, I don't know, on his planet. But there was a Monitor on every planet, and so that's how the Anti-Monitor still continued his plan. So we got the death scene. That was pretty cool. Oliver's death scene, and Barry and Sarah are there. And now this is the thing. It's like they really focused on the people most important in Oliver's life. And Barry is one of them. He's been the little brother throughout this whole show. It's kind of disappointing that Diggle wasn't there, although I think it being distilled down to just Barry and Sarah, I think that was so powerful. Because, like I said, this Crisis has been basically a love letter for Sarah and Oliver fans. A lot of us thought that Sarah and Oliver should have been the Arrow and Black Canary combo. And to have her really be there with him at the end, and not Laurel, and not Earth 2 Laurel, and not Felicity, that really spoke of the power of those characters, that relationship. And it's sad, because what could have been had they not followed up with the Felicity romance and the Felicity shippers, and, you know, a lot of people are saying the same thing that are Snowberry shippers, because they spent some, not a lot, but they spent some time with Barry and Caitlin together in this series. And the last two episodes, Iris doesn't even show up. And honestly, she's not missed. She's another Felicity character that's not really beneficial to the series, but they made their bed, so to speak, and they have to, like, well, they're married, so they have to interact and so on and so forth. I was always on board for Barry and Caitlin as well from the beginning of the show, and, you know, unfortunately that didn't happen, and it's obviously not going to happen now, so I don't really, you know, I don't have unreasonable expectations of it, but it does seem like they were throwing a bone, so to speak, to the fans that said, all right, you really liked it like this, but it never got to be this way, so there you have it. You've got a few scenes. Alright, so that was part 4. Let's talk now briefly about part 5, which was the Legends of Tomorrow episode. And it was like waking up to the new norm. Supergirl wakes up to the new norm, and everything is it's sort of a more heightened reality. And I thought this was also a very curious thing, that once you removed Arrow from the equation, we suddenly have the heightened reality. We suddenly have the the craziness. It's like before it was just Legends doing the crazy stuff that's too crazy even to be taken seriously. And Arrow was the most grounded, where we're just taking on guys with guns and arrows. And the Supergirl Flash kind of existed in between, where we've got some of the more comic booky characters, but they're not, we're not playing up the comic bookiness of it. But they go straight for the jugular here, bringing Bebo into the story as the giant blue plush character that is sort of their Elmo analog. And Supergirl and the Flash have to take him down. There was some kind of a sorcerer or something. I couldn't remember the name of the character. That was probably a character from the comics. I just was not aware if that was behind that. That seemed nice to see them working together again. We got the Marv Wolfman cameo. That was a lot of fun. I like Marv. Marv and Len Wein were... great Bronze Age legends. And to see Marv getting his due here was pretty fun. That was fun. Lex Luthor has somehow altered the timeline, or the development of the universe, where now he is revered as a great hero, and apparently Alex thinks a lot of him from Supergirl's sister. So only the Paragons, the main heroes here in this thing, are the only ones that really know what happened. And J'onn J'onzz, being the Martian Manhunter, goes around reminding all the other stars of the shows exactly what went down so that they know about it. Apparently Luthor probably knows too. Even though he wasn't a Paragon, he sort of wrote himself into the story as one. So that's interesting. Let's see. So we got the, like I said, this was the Legends episode, so we got a few cameos of, like, Nate and, Ava. Is that the other character? I don't remember her. I honestly don't. That's another thing that was great about this, crossover, was that they didn't wallow too much into the relationships. We didn't have to have this whole big thing about, Sarah and Ava, and... she just makes a cameo and that's it. And really not a whole lot to do with Batwoman and Black Lightning in this as the newcomers. They had some pretty cool moments. I liked Black Lightning shows up. They brought back Mick and Killer Frost together, and that was pretty cool. And seeing them work together, however brief. And Black Lightning shows up, and now apparently he is in the Arrowverse, because all the worlds are merged. So that was really cool. That was really exciting. I think he brings a lot to the proceedings, but not so much on his show. That's the thing. It's like, now it feels like we can have Black Lightning in a heightened reality. He was still kind of operating in Green Arrow territory, like on Arrow, where it's just some thugs and mercenaries and stuff. Now it feels like we can integrate him into some of the more heightened aspects here. All right, so let's see. Diggle gets Diggle and the crew, Dinah and Renee get brought up to speed, and there's a good emotional moment there. Like I said, David Ramsey really brings it, and you feel for Diggle that he wasn't there either times that Oliver died. Although we have to remember that there is another episode of Arrow, at least one more. I don't know if is there two more or is there just one more. There's at least another episode, so I'm sure that they're going to have their farewells with Diggle and Felicity. We already know that Emily Rickards is going to be back for the last episode. So, they get their moment with him, I'm pretty sure. But at this juncture, it did feel right that it was Sarah. And, I liked the relationship with Barry and Sarah. Barry was, he found her, and she was talking about how this was sort of her last link with her old life. Oliver was her last link. And, again, I really feel for the character, because it's sad, because honestly she pairs better with anybody that, you know, they haven't paired her with anybody that she's, you know, got chemistry with. And she would even pair pretty well with Barry if they wanted to. That wouldn't be my first choice, but... And she does seem like very much like a loner character. And whenever they try to set her up in a romance, it never feels genuine and authentic. But it does feel like she has this great rapport with all the other cast members that, you know, from other shows. Or, you know, I always say Constantine is probably a pretty good match for her. Oliver was. I thought Rip, to an extent, was. So, again, I really feel for the character. And, you know, she deserves better than what she's been given. In recent times, I think the first couple of seasons of Legends, you know, it worked out. I think they gave her due. But the past couple of seasons, it just feels like when she's talking about what could have been, I kind of feel for her even more. Because I think Sarah Lance could have been treated much better and had a much better story. You know, her story just kind of went off into the stratosphere and went way out of the range of what was originally the orbit should have been or could have been. We got to see Sarah in costume a lot more, which was something I was happy about as well. We got Pariah slash Nash, I guess Nash Wells. He was found and confronted. I don't know what that means for his character going forward in The Flash the rest of the season, but yeah, that was interesting. He's kind of taken, you know, he's owning up to his part in the whole thing. Alright, so the Anti-Monitor comes back, and again, plot-wise, I don't really know why this happened. There was some kind of residual Anti-Monitor particles in the world that somehow brought him back. I don't know it or understand it. Maybe I'll watch again, and it'll make sense. I don't know why, but basically he's back, and they gotta fight him again, and they gotta just kick the shadow demons and make them poof and disappear again. Again, I don't know. I don't get it. But the plan is for the Atom to shrink the Anti-Monitor and to have him continually shrink throughout eternity, apparently. That doesn't sound to me like the safest bet, you know what I mean? But apparently they can't kill him because an Anti-Monitor death would reverberate and destroy all the matter in the universe or something. So I don't know. But again, it's just comic book mumbo-jumbo in order to say, look, we got to get rid of him, but we got to do it a certain way. So they shrink him. They shrink him down. And it was pretty cool, though, that fight, when you get to see the Monitor, the Anti-Monitor, grow and be a huge... That's the kind of stuff I want to see in a superhero TV show. I want to see giants trample in the city. I want to see the superheroes fly up and smack them around. Of course, they had to have Superman. Oh, man. What is it with their hatred of Superman? I don't understand it. Once again, Superman is the most ineffective character in the room. Well, they're outside, okay, but he gets grabbed by the Anti-Monitor. He's helpless. He can't do anything. Supergirl attempts to save him. She really doesn't get the chance, I suppose, if you look at it that way. The Atom saves him. But the fact is not whether... Because they try to make Supergirl look more powerful than Superman. That's not necessarily my problem. My problem with it is that not only is Superman supposed to be the gold standard, he's supposed to be the most powerful. He's supposed to be the one everybody goes to for help. He doesn't get help from everybody else. But the problem is, it doesn't matter if it's Supergirl that saves him or not. Somebody's always got to save him. I mean, in this instance, I guess it was the Atom, but come on. Superman shouldn't be portrayed so weak every time we see him in the Arrowverse. And this is a guy that's going to get his own series next year. How do you give a guy his own series where so far, every time he's been shown, he has had to have help from somebody, or he has noped out before somebody else, or he has, you know, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. Why are they doing this to Superman, particularly when they're going to try to spin him off into his own show? Don't understand it. So then, yeah, that's the end. We got the montage, as I said. Superman apparently has sons now. I guess he had twins with Lois. According to Supergirl, Argo City is restored. And I don't know. What does this mean? I know in the comics he had a son, Jonathan, I think. I'm not really into the comics in recent times, but I guess this is something new they're trying to do. Again, I don't have a lot of hope for the Superman and Lois show. I don't really need to see Superman changing diapers and being a domestic, I don't know. It could go so very wrong, and I have a feeling they're gonna make it go so very wrong, but I will wait to be proven wrong. That's all I can say. I'll wait to be proven wrong. Diggle now has 2 children. Yeah, the oddness of the fact that they had a daughter named Sarah that disappeared and turned into a son named John, that was the weirdest thing. And so they kind of revised that and go back now, and now they have twins, I guess, and they also have twins. They've got John and Sarah, which is probably the way it should have been. It was very weird. It's very weird. There's been more do-overs in Lila's womb. I don't think history will ever see the like ever again in any in any fashion, in any recorded history, but I could be wrong. It was pretty strange that this is like the 3rd do-over for Lila's children. But I don't know. Will there be more changes in store? Who knows? We got a decent funeral scene there. It was very nice, where they all had some nice words to say. With regard of Oliver, we had the president, of course, female president. Seems like we keep getting female presidents on this universe. I don't know why. Is that sort of they're trying to imply something? But yeah, and everybody is made aware of Oliver Queen's sacrifice. They already dealt with, I guess, Mia and all that stuff in the other episodes. I can't remember what happened, but they weren't in this section of the crossover, so I don't know how they're going to bring them back, because obviously Green Arrow and the Canaries is a thing that's coming out next year as well. Again, like I said, they gave Sarah a good prominent part in this, and you know, it was a love letter to the Oliver and Sarah shippers. I you know, myself being one of them. And they do all this in the Hall of Justice, which of course evokes when they found this originally. And like I said, I'm happy now that all these characters can interact. They got a seat at the table for everyone. They got a seat still for Oliver, even though he's not there. But I guess he could be there someday. Come back, maybe. Mel, do you think? Well, we'll see. I don't think they had a seat for Diggle, right? And they're kind of like, they got it on the nose now. He's wearing green in his Spartan costume and everything. It's so on the nose that they're gonna make him Green Lantern, right? I imagine at some point they're gonna, and I imagine he should have a seat there too. Maybe he'll take Oliver's seat. I don't know. But Batwoman's there, Martian Manhunter. We finally got to see David Harewood in the Martian Manhunter suit. I think that's the first time with him. And hopefully that'll continue on too, because I want to see him more, you know, green and looking like the comic. And it happens only rarely. He's always in like a jacket and, you know, civilian duds. But yeah, you know, I mean, you got to get him in costume more often. Sarah's got a seat there at the table, and we have Black Lightning part of it. That was pretty funny. I like that with Black Lightning saying, wait a minute, is this, you know, world-level threats an ongoing thing or something? And, you know, she goes, well, that's how it is. Like I said, he's going to be fun, I think, crossing over more so than in his own show. In his own show, it's kind of a dark and dreary, again, somewhat SJW-laden storyline. But if you allow him to have fun and come over to the you know, to the playground with the rest of the kids. He'll be a much more enjoyable character, I think. Possibly the same for Batwoman, although I just feel like Batwoman's our Batman substitute. It's like, we can't have Batman, so it's like, okay, we'll use Batwoman as our Batman analog, but... So, I mean, I would much rather, you know, we've got Superman there as well. Much rather have Batman, but, you know, I guess this is what we have to work with. Superman is a part of the team here, although he doesn't feel like a founding member the way he should. Again, it's kind of hard. I understand the predicament they're in, because one of the things, if you're writing a comic, I'll tell you from experience, you always have to have it in the forefront of your mind that the star of the comic is your lead character. You know, my character is Bullets Bourbon, and then in the comics, The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon, he has to be the one that is the hero, and he can get help, but he's the star. You have to make the star the important aspect, the focal point of the show. And so, again, when you have Superman on Supergirl's show, you can't have him show her up too badly. I mean, he should be at least on par with his status being what it is, but I can understand not wanting him to surpass her, but you have to have them be at least equal. And that really hasn't happened with Superman. I mean, you know, not to belabor the point, but again, he doesn't really feel, you know, with the status that he should have on the Justice League. He feels more like Kate says, you know, I was the new kid last year. He's been in the show off and on for several years now. What has it been, 4 years or something? And he still feels like a junior member. He doesn't really feel like the Superman that everyone looks up to, and, you know, it feels more like he's in her shadow when supposedly it was going to feel the other way around. And of course, we get the happy ending. Everybody's happy and smiling, which is good. I liked that. I appreciated the hopefulness, the optimism. Contrasting with, again, like Avengers Endgame, it felt very dour when we had to have the funeral, and, you know, it didn't really feel uplifting in any sense. And in this case, it did feel fairly uplifting. It felt a lot better to end the Oliver Queen saga, at least in the sense that the rest of the Arrowverse is connected to him in that way. It felt very successful, and it felt like they earned it, they honored him, and it was really cool. And then they end it with apparently Gleek. If you don't remember Gleek from the Super Friends old 70s show, 70s, early 80s, Gleek was the blue monkey that was the mascot, so to speak, of the Wonder Twins, who were those weirdly, I don't know, Donnie and Marie-esque, Vulcanish, I don't know where they came from, but I don't know, they were a mainstay on Super Friends for a long time, and apparently they're going to do something with them, I guess. I know they did them in live action before on Smallville, and I remember thinking they didn't make them ridiculous, which I thought was a pretty amazing feat, but I guess that is going to have something to do with if they are going to do another crossover. And again, Legends of Tomorrow being what it is, in their episode, we had a lot of fourth wall breaking where they're talking sort of about a crossover as if it was something they knew was a contrived event that they may or may not be invited to. It was pretty funny. They can get away with some of that stuff, which is cool. Like I said, I like this more heightened reality now, if this is the way they're going to keep it. You know, where they can cross-pollinate a little bit easier, where they can, you know, all have the same sort of lighthearted tone. I mean, I'm not saying that every show should be a carbon copy of the others, but there needs to be, like, that kind of connectivity where you can buy it, so you don't feel like, well, you know, Batwoman seems out of place with The Flash, or, you know, Supergirl wouldn't feel right in Black Lightning's show. It shouldn't feel that way, and I think with the merging of the worlds, maybe it won't now. But we'll have to wait and see. So, wrapping it up, yeah, I am going to give not only the 4th and 5th part, I'm going to review, you know, I'm going to rank this as one whole miniseries, as one whole piece. I think I'm going to give it 5 stars. I think they did a spectacular job. Like I said, the plot's a little bit of a lightweight, but, you know, I would prefer that, you know, to not getting the character moments right. I think they got everybody right character-wise, and they, you know, it's one thing if you have a great intricate plot or whatever, and the characters are just sort of there as cardboard standouts, you know, standees. I think in this case, it was a lot better that we got the relationships right and the interactions between the characters right, more so than the plot being stellar and, you know, one of the greatest A-plots of all time. I'd rather that we got what we got, which was, you know, great characterization and a lot of great scenes in between these characters. Again, like, we got John Wesley Shipp's flashback. I mean, we got so many great moments that should be always remembered. You know, the meeting of the Flash and Black Lightning. I mean, there's a lot of great moments in this. You know, a great farewell to Oliver Queen, who, again, and Stephen Amell, who really birthed this whole entire universe on CW. And it's going to be going on for the foreseeable future. I mean, I don't see this ending anytime soon. All the shows have been renewed, with the exception of Arrow, which Arrow is actually coming back as a spin-off, Green Arrow and the Black Canaries, with most of that cast returning, I believe. I mean, we got Katie Cassidy and Juliana Harkavy, along with Catherine McNamara. So, again, the Arrow in the Arrowverse is not going anywhere. And, of course, Superman and Lois coming out. We also have Stargirl that is, I guess, going to start on DC Universe, but its episodes are going to migrate to CW. I don't know exactly how they're going to do that, but they're going to do that. So, like I said, the Arrowverse isn't going anywhere. Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Black Lightning, and Batwoman have all been renewed. Supposedly, from what I'm told anyway, Batwoman and Supergirl are doing great in the ratings. So, apparently, they don't have anything to worry about. I think Legends could bounce back from a pretty bad year last year. I think The Flash is doing pretty good this year so far. I think it's been a pretty good season, but we'll have to see how that works out. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Did you enjoy Crisis on Infinite Earths? Did it let you down? Did it surpass your expectations? Did you feel that this was the best of the crossover events like I do? What do you think they could do going forward for another crossover? Do you think Stephen Amell will come back for another crossover? That's not an impossibility, I suppose. We're going to have to wait and see how it turns out, how the final episode or episodes of Arrow turn out before we can probably judge that. But from what it seemed, he was going to remain alive in the future, in the Monitor's company. At least that's what I remember from last season. And how are they going to go forward with Luthor? Is he going to be a Supergirl villain, a Superman villain, both? Interesting times ahead of us. So, that is 5 stars for CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths. Until next we meet, this is Johnnie Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.